Now, to recap, these latest protests in Israel erupted after an off-duty cop in Haifa shot and killed 19-year-old Israeli-Ethiopian Solomon Teka. An initial investigation seemed to indicate that the officer indeed felt threatened, as he reported being attacked with stones just minutes before the shooting. But further inquiry still seems to point to excessive force and a breach in the protocols regarding the use of live fire. And the sentiments and the issues at the heart of this conflict are nothing new. In fact, a Knesset committee outlined the problems and potential solutions back in 2015. So what happened since then? And, how did we get here? What can you tell us about the Palmore report?
All right. Well, the Justice Ministry basically formed the Palmore Committee back in 2015 to investigate institutionalized and racial discrimination against the Ethiopian Israeli community. And the report detailed a lot more issues than just excessive force on the side of the police. The report basically concludes that these incidents and other such events have eroded away the trust between the establishment and, of course, those of Ethiopian origin.
All right, well, I can certainly understand that conclusion. And then equally, I can understand the protests. But I guess one of the remaining questions is this, is this the right way to be going about it? Because violent protests in the streets, even if only among a minority of the protesters, which it is just a minority, but that can cast the rest of the demonstrations in a negative light.
Right.
Also, the Palmore report detailed 51 recommendations for government action, 43 of which have been implemented or at least are in the process of implementation. So isn't something slowly but surely being done?
So the answer here is yes and no. First, with respect to the Palmore report's recommendations, you are right. A lot of them have been accomplished, including hosting seminars to improve officers' cultural understandings. But the recommendations that have not been implemented are perhaps among the most important, like requiring police to videotape interrogations of Ethiopians accused of a felony. And that brings us back, of course, to the first question that you asked. Is this the right way to protest? Well, after multiple deaths, assaults, and of course, years of waiting for a system that is yet to catch up, the community here is frustrated. They're angry. They're disillusioned. So while we never condone, of course, or support acts of violence and harassment, the actions taken over the past few days come from a place of what some would call desperation and hopelessness.
All right. Well, to continue this debate now over whether or not the Ethiopian protests of the past few days are effective and justified, we're joined now via Skype by Rabbi Dov Lipman, a former member of Knesset with the Yesh Atid party. Dov, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, in your opinion, are these protests effective? And if so, why or why not? Because a lot of people are saying, that the violence kind of undermines the message. I don't know. I'll let you take it away.
I'm on Skype with you today and not in the studio because there was no way I'd be able to make it to Tel Aviv. And that's a minor, insignificant problem. People can't go to weddings, they can't get to memorial services, can't get to jobs. I think, and I spoke to demonstrators yesterday, I was stuck in a demonstration. I told them to block the traffic for a certain period of time, make a lot of noise. I understand, and there's real legitimate complaints that the Ethiopian community has in Israel. But keeping people away from where they need to go for hours and hours, I actually believe had a reverse effect. As opposed to having a country with them demanding change, wanting to see significant improvements for the community, I think today all we're talking about is the demonstrations and not the real change that needs to take place in the Ethiopian community.
Well, that's where the question comes in here. What are the protesters supposed to do when they are consistently not seeing a change take place? What do you do here?
I understand the angst and the I think that shutting down a whole country for 2 hours would have been a massive statement, and I really do believe that it would have led to even the broader Israeli population saying we need to address their issues. I was sitting in traffic, people were fine. People were saying they have to do this, they deserve the right to do this, it is wrong, there was an incident which needs to be addressed, and not just the incident, but the broader issues of the population. But once we started reaching the 3-hour mark, it started turning, and especially when it reaches a point where it gets violent, now all we're talking about is the demonstrations and the police in terms of the demonstrations, not the police and how they deal with the Ethiopian community, not do Ethiopians have full rights and full ability to move forward in Israeli society. And that's what the conversation has to be. And sadly, the demonstrators and their leaders weren't able to hear that, even as I told them that I believe it was starting to boomerang against them instead of helping their cause.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Lipman, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And of course, Natasha, Kirtchuk, thank you as well for being with us today.
My pleasure.